Vanachari Jayo Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jayo Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jan Vishnu Pad Padmamsa Parvajikacharya Asto Tarsata Shishimad. His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki Jai. Jan Vishnu Pad Padmamsa Parvajikacharya Asto Tarsata Shishimad. Shringa Guru Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Goswami Maharaj Ki Jai. Anantikoti Vaishnavinda Ki Jai. ISKCON BBT Founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai. Premsiko Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaur Bhaktivinda Ki Jai. Shri Shri Radhakrishna Gopi Gopinath Shamakund Radhakund Giri Govardhan Ki Jai. Vrindavan Dham Ki Jai. Mayapur Dham Ki Jai. Navadip Dham Ki Jai. Jagannath Puri Dham Ki Jai. Jamunamai Gangamai Ki Jai. Tulsi Devi Bhakti Devi Ki Jai. Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Jai. Bhagavad Gita Ki Jai. Harinam Sankirtan Yoga Ki Jai. Transcendental Book Distribution Ki Jai. Harinam Sankirtan Yoga Ki Jai. Transcendental Prashadam Distribution Ki Jai. Gaur Pramananda Hari Hari Bol. All glories to the Sima devotees Hare Krishna. All glories to the Sima devotees Hare Krishna. All glories to all the Sima devotees Hare Krishna. All glories to Sri Sri Guru and Sri Gauranga. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Well, thank you all for coming today. I'm very excited to share something with you that I've learned from Srila Prabhupada and my spiritual mentors. But I have a humble request. If anybody knows how to make this full screen on the TV, you're welcome to please assist. The normal person that doesn't seem to be here that knows how to do that. I think the mic should go up too. Can you hear me okay? Yeah. Could you bring up the volume a little bit, please? It's funny, no one's here when you need them. So anyway. But nobody knows how to use the computer, the screen. Nobody has a big screen at home they could use. So anyway, we'll just show it this way then. At least we see some of it. Hare Krishna. Haribo, is it up? Hare Krishna. Can you hear me better? Okay, great. Jai. So, we're going to talk today. There's a topic here. Self-realization in Kali Yuga. This is our topic today. So you're familiar with Kali Yuga? It's not to be confused with Kali or Durga. The personality of Kali represents the qualities of this age or this Yuga. So that's represented. So it's an age of deterioration. This is described in the 12th canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam. And it explains how human society can be rescued from the dangerous oceans of the age of Kali. So that's going to be described. So here's a verse I like to chant. We could all chant together. Sorry, my voice is a little harsh today. But we could chant this verse from the Bhagavad Gita together. Paritanaya sarunam vinasaya chadushkritam dharma samstapanartaya sambhavami yuge yuge. So this verse directly states the purpose of the Lord's incarnations is to protect his devotees, destroy the demoniac, and uphold religious principles when they decline. So it emphasizes that the Lord descends periodically to guide humanity, and this verse sets the context for understanding Krishna's incarnations. And actually he comes in this age as Lord Chaitanya to propagate the holy names. So we'll talk about that more. This is a translation. To deliver the pious and to annihilate the miscreants, as well as to reestablish the principles of religion, I myself appear millennium after millennium. So this is described there. Can you see that okay, everybody? Okay. So there's a very nice purport. It's kind of a long purport, but I'm not going to read the whole purport. But there's a couple of paragraphs I'd like to just read to you to get some insight here. So Srila Prabhupada says in the purport there, according to the Bhagavad Gita, a sadhu or a holy man is a man in Krishna consciousness. And a person may appear to be irreligious, but if he has the qualifications of Krishna consciousness wholly and fully, he is understood to be a sadhu. And duskritam applies to those who do not care for Krishna consciousness. Such miscreants or duskritam are described as foolish and the lowest of mankind, even though they may decorate it with mundane education. So whereas a person who is 100% engaged in Krishna consciousness is accepted as a sadhu, even though he may not be very learned or cultured. So that was one point Srila Prabhupada made. And then he talks about, in another paragraph here, avatar, he mentions. So avatar, or incarnation of God, he descends from the kingdom of God for material manifestation. But it doesn't come in a material body though. And the particular form of the personality of God who so descends is called an incarnation or avatar. Such incarnations are situated in the spiritual world, the kingdom of God. And when they descend to the material creation, they assume the name avatar. And then this is another point Srila Prabhupada makes about how he incarnates himself every millennium. And he also incarnates in this age of Kali. You saw one incarnation in the beginning there, Kalki, with the sword. He comes at the end of the age of Kali. But actually, now, and right before our time, it's said here that he incarnates in this age of Kali, and it's stated in the Bhagavatam, the incarnation of the age of Kali is, yes, Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, who spread the worship of Krishna by the Sankirtan movement. And that's the congregational chanting of Hare Krishna, like that. So he spread Krishna consciousness throughout India, and he predicted that this culture of Sankirtan would be spread all over the world, to every town and village. And this is what we're thankful for Srila Prabhupada, what he did. So that's very nicely described there. So there's a couple of verses related to this verse. Basically what we're saying in this verse is that religion consists of the principles prescribed by God himself. And when there's neglect of these principles, God descends to reestablish them. And how Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, we just mentioned, he appears millennium after millennium to deliver the pious and annihilate the miscreants, and to then reestablish religious principles. So he's protecting the devotees from persecution by the demons and the miscreants. And even those demons, they may be in the family of devotees. So still he's protecting them in that way. So we mentioned Srimad Bhagavatam. This is a Vedic literature. They're described as Puranas or Itihasas. And there's the Sama, there's the Artaiva, there's different ones, Artarva, the Rig, the Yajur, the Puranas, Itihasas, Upanishads, it goes on. And these are all emanations from the breathing of the Supreme Being. So it's not less important, the Srimad Bhagavatam. It's actually considered to be the ripened fruit of all the Vedas. And besides that, even the most perfectly liberated soul, Sukadeva Goswami, he's absorbed in studying these Vedic literatures. So, although he was already self-realized. So, Sutta Goswami, who's narrating the Bhagavatam, he's following in the footsteps of Sukadeva Goswami. And he's just repeating these and explaining this knowledge. So we see here we have all the way to the first canto, and they describe different things throughout the Bhagavatam. Like in the first canto, it's talking about the history and different personalities that appeared in the past. Like we hear about Parikshit Maharaj in the first canto. In the second canto, we hear about Lord Brahma, how he creates and things. In the third canto, we hear about another incarnation of Krishna, Lord Kapila. And then the fourth canto, you see there we see Prithu Maharaj, and also Dhruva Maharaj is mentioned. And then in the fifth canto, we have Bharat Maharaj. The sixth canto, it talks about Ajamil. He was a great, very elevated Brahmana who fell to the temptations that we have in this world. So it goes on. And in the 10th canto, we have Krishna's pastimes. And then we see here the 11th and 12th, it gives us the final knowledge about renouncing the world and giving us the predictions of this age of Kali. And as you read these, you begin to see, oh wow, this is happening now. Yeah, it actually is happening now, and it's going to get worse and worse. So these are itihasas. So itihasa, iti means thus, and hasas means history. So thus it happened. So it's like, but also not the past, but also the future. It tells us what's going to happen. So we understand what Kali is, but we're not so much interested in becoming Kali conscious, but we want to become more Krishna conscious. And this is what the scriptures are doing. They're teaching us, they're waking us up. Become aware of the environment you're in. Don't be oblivious to the precarious position. Understand the challenges, the influences, and how to take shelter of spiritual life so we don't get affected. So this is what the Bhagavatam and these transcendental literatures, they're informing us about Kali Yuga while remaining focused on Krishna consciousness. That's what's important. So here, this is from the 12th canto. There's a verse, and it goes like this: Pumsam Kali Kirtan Doshan. That there's 3 types of contamination in the age of Kali. And in Kali Yuga, this is a translation. Their objects, places, even personalities are all polluted. The Almighty Personality of Godhead, however, can remove all such contamination from the life of one who fixes the Lord within his mind. So this is an interesting story. You might wonder what these 4 images are. When Maharaj Yudhisthira, he was the king, and some of the citizens used to come and visit him a lot because he was very learned. He knew so much, and he was a pure devotee of Krishna. So one time this man, he came to the palace of King Yudhisthira to ask him the meaning of some very strange sights he saw. And here I'm trying to reproduce them the best way I could. So on the way to the palace, there was Bhima. He was at the gate. You know Bhima. And he said, where are you going? And he told him, I'm going to go see Yudhisthira because, I have some questions to ask him. So Bhima said, well, you can ask me. these questions? He goes, okay. So the man said, okay. It's not very easy to get past Bhima. So the man said, I had these strange visions. I saw an agricultural field where the fence was moving in and it was eating all the crops. He's like, wow, that's weird. And he goes, yeah, and then I had another vision. There was a large pot of water and there was 8 smaller pots. And the water from the pot was emptied into these 8 smaller pots. But when they poured the water back into the large pot, it was half full. And Bhima's like scratching his head, wondering what's going on. So there's 4 things that he saw, and this is the 3rd thing. He said, then I saw an elephant. It was going through an eye of a needle. But the tail got stuck. And that's weird. Now Bhima was really like, I'm not sure what this is all about. And then the 4th thing he said, I saw a huge boulder. Many people, they couldn't even budge it. But one sadhu came and just with a single thread from his chadar, he started to easily pull the boulder out of the way. So Bhima didn't have a clue. I said, go ask Yudhishthira. So he did. And then when he came back, he was happily leaving, he was smiling. And Bhima goes, wait. What happened? He goes, he told me that it was, the signs of Kali Yuga. And he goes, well, tell me more. What happened? What do these mean? So in the first image, we see there, in Kali Yuga, those who are supposed to protect and take care of the citizens, they enter into your life and they take everything away from you. And you have some ideas who that might be? Nowadays, we have the government, taxation. Even education used to be free, but now it's a business. Hospitals used to be free. It's a business now. Legality. There's so much cheating, so much faith. Even the devices, we talked about things are polluted. Your devices are polluted, and they're stealing your information, and they're using it against you to control you. So there's so much cheating and things going on. So you wonder why there's no faith or trust, even in a spiritual movement. And he goes, wow, that's amazing. So the second thing he said, with the pots, he said, you give love, but there's no reciprocation. They're not grateful. There's a Sanskrit word for gratitude. You know what that is? It's called kritagya. So krita means action and gya means to know. So we should know what acts have been done for you. You see, but today we see relationships are very difficult. And people are just thinking of themselves. And that's the difference between heaven and hell. I heard this story about someone who was explaining the difference between heaven and hell. And there's this very long table, and there was these people at the table, and there was some food in front of them, but they all looked emaciated. But they had very long arms, and their hands were like spoons. But their arms were so long that they couldn't even put it into their mouth. So everybody was just, starving. And so that's like hellish. Everybody's just thinking about themselves, selfish. But in another place, hell is like the same thing, same image. But what they're doing is they're using their hand to feed the person across the table from them. And the other person is feeding him. So this shows the selflessness compared to selfishness. And then we get to the elephant. His tail stuck in the needle. He goes through the needle, but his nail is stuck. And this refers to all the big thieves that get away with everything, right? And the small thieves and the small people, they're always punished. They can't get away with it. And people like telling lies, like you tell a little lie, people scrutinize you. But if someone tells you a big lie, then he can't be lying about that. So actually Hitler had a PR man, and that's what he said. If you're going to tell a lie, you better tell a big lie, because if you tell a small lie, nobody believes you. You see. So then the last one, the sadhu with the thread. So this refers to Kali Dosa, the ocean of faults. That's Kali, is like this big boulder. So despite all the difficulties, the imperfections, the obstacles, there's one good quality in this age. That's simply by the unassuming thread of the holy name, we can counteract all these boulders of Kali Yuga. So this is the mercy we get from the sadhus. They give us this process to become self-realized in this age. So here we see, there's a nice verse in the book. Anybody has heard of the Light of the Bhagavat? It's a nice verse or book based on a chapter in the 10th canto of the autumn season. And the different seasons, we talked about yugas, they're like universal seasons. Like we have seasons, but there's universal seasons. And in the Bhagavatam, it talks about these. So this is the verse from the Bhagavatam, it's verse 5. The evening in the rainy season is dark all around. There's no sight of the twinkling stars on the horizon or the pleasing moon. They are covered by clouds, and the insignificant glowworms become prominent because the absence of the luminaries in the open sky. So just see, as there's seasonal changes, there's also changing ages in the duration of the manifest cosmic world. And these are called yugas, or periods. And there's 3 modes of nature, and there's also these various ages are actually dominated by these modes. And in the mode, there's different ages in the mode of Satya Yuga. It's predominated by the mode of goodness. And then when you get to Treta Yuga, it's mixed with passion and goodness. And then when you get lower, there's Dwapara Yuga. It's mixed with passion and goodness and ignorance. But at the last stage, the winter age, it's called the age of quarrel. It's Kali Yuga. And it's a period of darkness and ignorance. And there's many difficulties as compared to like the winter season or the rainy season in some places. So it's very difficult. It's very damp, cold, a lot of misery. So it's like that. So, but in Kali Yuga, in that dark time, it's there's a lack of proper guidance. And then what happens, instead of taking guidance from like the moons and the stars, people are taking guidance from insignificant glowworms. And this is what it's like in Kali Yuga. There's many so-called, incarnations of God or so-called sadhus, and but they're just glowworms. And they seem to be prominent when the sun or the moon is not available. So these are self-made incarnations of Krishna. So we have to be careful of this. So this is Satya Yuga. It's, we see on the right, it's predominant with goodness, and then it decreases 25% less and less. And it describes what people will be like in this age. And we'll go more about that. We'll talk more about that. So this breaks it down a little bit for you. There's another verse in the Bhagavad Gita. It's from the 8th chapter, 17th verse. Sahasra Yuga Paryantam. Talks about human calculation. 1,000 ages taken together form the duration of Brahma's one day. And such also is the duration of his night. So this is showing the duration of the material universe. It's actually limited, but there's different cycles and kalpas. And a kalpa is a day of Brahma. He's the creator. And it consists of 1,000 cycles of 4 yugas: Satya, Treta, Dwapara, and Kali, which we just talked about, like the different seasons. So we see there's Satya Yuga is the golden age, and it's characterized by virtue, wisdom, religion, and there's practically no ignorance and vice. And that lasts 1,728,000 years. And in the next yuga, you see there, the Silver Age, it's introduced, vice is introduced in that age, and it lasts for 1,296,000 years. And then we go to Dwapara Yuga, the Copper Age, and there's even greater decline in virtue and religion. And then vice increases, and this one lasts, as you see there, 864,000 years. And then finally we come to Kali Yuga. It's our present age, the Iron Age, it's described. And we've been experiencing this for the last 5,000 years. So see, it lasts 432,000 years. So we have 427,000 years left. So we're still in the beginning. So that's why people are still religious. But there's still an abundance of strife, ignorance, irreligion, vice, you see. And virtue is going to become practically non-existent. So this is the Kali Age. And it explains there that human life and spiritual qualities will diminish. And humans will be tormented by many problems. Uncleanliness, violence, greed, quarrel will increase. And people will be obsessed with satisfying their bellies and genitals. Brahmanas, Kshatriyas, and Vaishyas will be scarce. And most people will be Sudras or uncivilized. So it goes on and on and on and on. I could just go on. There's a whole, the 12th canto is all about the symptoms of the age of Kali. So anyway, getting back to Lord Brahma. So he lives for 100 of these. He rolls, these 4 yugas rotating 1,000 times, comprise 1 day of Lord Brahma. And the same is for his night. And he lives 100 of those years. Can you imagine? And then he dies. So those hundreds of years, by earth calculations, would be 311 trillion years, 40 billion years. So that's Brahma's life. It seems very fantastic, but it's described, it's just like as brief as a lightning flash in the causal ocean, where innumerable Brahmas rise and disappear. They're like bubbles in the Pacific Ocean, you know. So this is all part of the universe, and it's in constant flux. Like it's going in cycles, round and round. It's completely, we're going through this like that. So here we see, this is Kali personified. He was detected in the beginning of this age when Krishna left. And there's a chapter in the first canto, chapter 17. It talks about how Maharaj Pariksit encounters the personality of Kali, you know, in this age. So in the form of a low-class man, but you see he was dressed as a king, and he was beating a bull and a cow. And the bull represents religion, like austerity, cleanliness, mercy, and truthfulness. And the cow represents Mother Earth. And their suffering, it indicates the state of the world in Kali Yuga. So Pariksit here, you see, confronts Kali. He's ready to kill him with his sword, but he spares his life because he surrenders. And he allowed Kali, he said, okay, you could reside in places where there's gambling, drinking, prostitution, and animal slaughter. So just see places getting contaminated. So this chapter is very interesting if you read it. It talks about and it emphasizes the duty of a king and the leaders to establish religious principles and curb irreligious activities. Not be like the fence that just closes in on the, you know, all the resources and the citizens and just, you know, consumes them. So this is what a king should be. He should be fearful to the miscreants as death personified. And it explains how gold actually encourages falsity, intoxication, lust, envy, and violence. So a proper king, he uses his wealth and economic policies to reinstate dharma, not just for his selfish means. So self-realization in Kali Yuga is hindered due to this lack of qualified leaders and the decline of Brahminical culture and the prevalence of pride, illicit sex, intoxication, and dishonesty. But it can be revived. because we're trying to talk about self-realization in the age of Kali. So it could be revived if we get qualified heads of executive heads who fear God and they curb their sinful activities. And the propagation of devotional service and Krishna consciousness, distribution of one's wealth for the Lord's service, and spiritual education. So this chapter really describes nicely that if we have strong political will and spiritual knowledge, we can overcome these degradations of Kali and achieve self-realization. So here we see Kali, we're in the worst age. We described how religious principles are reduced, and nobody can say they never performed any sin. That's why it's called the sinful age. It's characterized by people, who are living now. In the first canto, it also describes, there's a verse, it says, "O learned one, in this iron age of Kali, men always have but short lives. They are quarrelsome, lazy, misguided, unlucky, and above all, always disturbed." So when you get back to the 12th canto, it describes all the negative symptoms of the age of Kali. Would you like to hear a few more? Okay. So it says here, there will be decline of religion, truthfulness, tolerance, mercy, health, memory, and duration of life. People will be judged based on wealth and power rather than character or virtues. Law and justice will depend on one's influence. Marriages will be based on superficial attraction, and commerce will rely on deceit. One's priestly status will be determined simply by external dress. Principles of religion and propriety will be neglected. Clever arguments and rhetoric will be seen as signs of wisdom. The earth will become overpopulated and overwhelmed by corrupt leaders, focused on gaining power. Society will suffer from lack of food, excessive taxes, disease, anxiety, environmental disturbances. I mean, we see this is happening now. But just think towards the end of Kali, it'll increase. It'll get worse. I'll read a few more. The average lifespan will drop to 50 years, and the size and memory of humans will diminish. The social system of Varnashram Dharma will break down. Eventually, Lord Kalki will appear, we saw that, to destroy the corrupt rulers and reestablish religious principles before the next Satya Yuga again. But it mentions some good qualities, so we won't be too depressed. There's a nice verse that says, "Kalaradosha nidhi rajan astiheya ko mahan guna kirtanadeva krishnasya mukta sangha param bhajet." My dear king, although Kali Yuga is full of faults, there is still one good quality about this age. Simply by chanting the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra, one can become free from the material bondage and be promoted to the transcendental kingdom. So that's so nice. And then there's another verse that says, whatever result was obtained in Satya Yuga by meditation, so in different yugas there's different processes of self-realization. So in Treta Yuga it was Satya, it was by meditation, and Treta Yuga is performed by sacrifices. And then in Dwapara Yuga, it's by serving the lotus feet of Krishna, like in deity temple worship. And then in Kali Yuga, simply by chanting Hare Krishna Maha Mantra. Just see how powerful. It's the most simple but the most powerful process. So this is all described nicely in this age where we can become very, very fortunate. So I think I'll just skip some of these there's so many references described. So, but it's described there that, we're in the beginning of Kali Yuga, but as it goes on, it's going to become what they call Gaur Kali Yuga. And it starts with acid rain. After the acid rain, all the vegetation gets destroyed. And people actually become cannibals. And they end up eating each other. I eat you and you eat me. That Kali Yuga will start. So that's very heavy. So, but we know that we have the Bhagavatam. We mentioned the Bhagavatam. It gives us the light. It's described after Lord Krishna's departure. There was a question that was asked. What were his religious principles? Krishna left the planet. So he answers here, he says, after Lord Krishna's departure, this world at the start of Kali Yuga, the Srimad Bhagavatam was compiled by Vyasadeva to shine light on transcendental knowledge for the lost, those lost in ignorance. So Srimad Bhagavatam, Bhagavad Gita, they act like torchbearers and they dispel the darkness of Kali Yuga. And Srimad Bhagavatam is the direct representative of Krishna. So in essence, self-realization in Kali Yuga is facilitated by taking shelter of the teachings of the Bhagavad Gita and the Srimad Bhagavatam and adopting the process of the congregational chanting of Hare Krishna. And that's recommended by Lord Chaitanya. And that's the spiritual path. It's illuminated and purifies this dark age. So this is Lord Chaitanya. He's the incarnation in Kali Yuga. He came. Even amongst the animals, he got them to chant and dance Hare Krishna. So what to speak of the human beings? So this is the congregational chanting. So this is the beginning. And as we mentioned, Kali Yuga, there's a golden age for 10,000 years. And it's where everyone chants the holy name of God and becomes spiritually perfect in a very short time. In fact, there's demigods waiting to take birth in Kali Yuga so that they can quickly go back to the spiritual world just by chanting Hare Krishna. So we're very fortunate. So this is the self-realization in this age. We have to take advantage of this. Appearing Srimad Bhagavatam, accepting the sadhus, the saintly person. They have the thread. Insignificant to bring us back home. They engage us in devotional service. They teach us how to worship the deity, even in this age. And they create holy places. Instead of contaminated places by Kali Yuga, they create holy places like the temple atmosphere. You can convert your home into a temple. So it's like that, you could do that. But it's very important we understand a big problem today is mental health. We talked about contaminating association with things, places, and personalities. People are associating with things, contaminated things like drugs, destroying their mind. Places, sinful places, sinful personalities. So to see the mind is like the interface, the mind and intelligence is the interface between the body and the soul. And if it's not functioning properly, then how can we advance? So we have to treat this body as a temple, make it a holy place. There's a verse in the Bhagavad Gita, Chanchalam hi mana Krishna. Arjuna says the mind is restless, turbulent, obstinate, and very strong, O Krishna. And to subdue it, I think, is more difficult than controlling the wind. So we see here this image describes how the soul is the passenger in the car or the chariot. The intelligence is the driver. The mind is the reins or the driving instrument. And the senses are the horses. You see, so the self is thus the enjoyer or sufferer in association with the mind and the senses. So the intelligence is supposed to direct the mind. But sometimes the mind is so strong and obstinate that it overcomes even one's intelligence. It's like an acute infection. And it surpasses the efficacy of the medicine. So we have to have a strong mind and practice, yoga. But Arjuna says, how can I control the mind? It's like trying to control the wind. But it's described, the easiest way to control the mind, as suggested by Lord Chaitanya, is to chant Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. So this is what happens. If we actually absorb our mind in Krishna consciousness, if we know the nature, his transcendental nature, his appearance, his activities, and when we leave the body, we won't have to take birth again. When we get free from these attachments, fear, anger, fully absorbed in Krishna, take refuge in him, many persons in the past became purified. and thus they attain transcendental love for Krishna. So that's our goal, is to somehow or another hear about, glorify, meditate upon, worship, respect Krishna. He's situated in our heart. Then he'll remove from our mind the contamination accumulated for many thousands of lifetimes. So that's the process. Oops, sorry, I passed up one here. So it's described here like, there's a verse, Heta hemni stito va nir. Heta means just as, and hemi means gold. And stita means situated, vani in fire. So just as fire applied to gold removes any discoloration caused by traces of other metals, Lord Vishnu within the heart purifies the mind of the yogis. So that's described there. So here, you might not believe me, so here we can listen to Srila Prabhupada. He talks about Kali Yuga, just a couple minutes, if it'll come through. Hopefully the sound will be up. See if we can turn it up. Looks like this thing. What is it back here? Oh wow. Anyway, the transcript, I have it here. Prabhupada's saying, we are in a very precarious condition. Very unfavorable condition. The best thing is to pray to Krishna. Please pick me up very soon and let me go back to your place. If you have to come back again, oh, you do not know how much misery we have to undergo. Because with the advancement of Kali Yuga, everything is becoming more and more miserable. There is no happiness in family life. There is no happiness in social life. There is no happiness in political life. There's no happiness in earning livelihood. Everything is encumbered, Prabhupada says. And then also, since this is not going to play, this is an album. I don't know if anyone has seen this album. It was the first Hare Krishna album. It was produced in 1966 by a person called Alan Coleman. He attended one of Srila Prabhupada's lectures in 26 2nd Avenue, and he was inspired to get the devotees to make an album. So they did. And Srila Prabhupada in that album, he mentions how we should chant the Hare Krishna mantra. And Prabhupada mentions here, too bad we can't hear his voice, but I have the transcript here, and we could mention some. I think we have some time. So this is what Prabhupada says. This transcendental vibration by chanting of Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, is the sublime method for reviving our Krishna consciousness. As living spirit souls, we are all originally Krishna conscious entities. But due to our association with matter since time immemorial, our consciousness is now polluted by material atmosphere. In this polluted concept of life, we're trying to exploit the resources of material nature, but actually we are becoming more and more entangled in our complexities. This illusion is called Maya, our hard struggle for existence. Over the stringent laws of material nature, this illusory struggle against the material nature can at once be stopped by revival of our Krishna consciousness. So he's telling us the solution here. So he says here, Krishna consciousness is not an artificial imposition on the mind. This consciousness is original energy of the living entity. When we hear the transcendental vibration, this consciousness is revived. And the process is recommended by authorities for this age. By practical experience also, we can perceive that by chanting this Maha Mantra, or the great chanting for deliverance, one can at once feel transcendental ecstasy from the spiritual stratum. When one is factually on the plane of spiritual understanding, surpassing the stages of sense, mind, and intelligence, one is situated on the transcendental plane. This chanting of Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, is directly enacted from the spiritual platform, surpassing all lower stages of consciousness, namely sensual, mental, and intellectual. There's no need in understanding the language of the mantra. There's no need of mental speculation or intellectual adjustment for chanting the mantra. It springs automatically from the spiritual platform. As such, anyone can take part in this transcendental sound vibration without any previous qualification and dance in ecstasy. We have seen it practically. Even a child can take part in the chanting. Even a dog can take part in it. So today we're like dogs actually, but actually literally many dogs have been liberated like that. So it goes on and on how we have to hear from the pure devotee, don't hear from non-devotees, because it's like poisonous effects, like a milk becoming contaminated by the lips of a snake, and how it's a form of addressing the Lord, his energies, and it's one of his potencies. And I'll just see the last thing he said here. So he said, no other means, therefore, of spiritual realization is as effective in this age as chanting the Maha Mantra. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. So that's that. So here we see, this is what can happen. Those who are actually advanced in knowledge and are able to appreciate the essential value of the age of Kali, such enlightened persons worship Kali Yuga, because in this fallen age, all perfection of life can easily be achieved by the Sankirtan movement. So that's nicely described there. So here we see, we don't want to wait for Lord Kalki to come. So we have to take advantage of this 10,000 golden year period. Otherwise it'll be back to hell, back to Godhead. But no, we want to go back home, back to Godhead. And that's the process Srila Prabhupada explains to us. So he said that Krishna consciousness means not to remain in the dark consciousness. Tamasi ma jyotir gama. That's the Vedic instruction. It says don't remain in the darkness. And what is the darkness? The darkness is the bodily conception of life. So we should get out of that. So we don't want to be Kali conscious, but we actually want to be Kali cautious also. So Krishna conscious and Kali cautious. That's what we want to be. So thank you for your kind attention. And if there's any comments or questions, please feel free to speak up and express yourself. Jai. Everyone understand this age we're in? And yes, I see a hand back there. Oh, you have a pretty loud voice. Yeah, I'll repeat it.
You mentioned, well, first of all, thank you for giving the Sunday Peace class. Very nice.
Thank you.
You mentioned how leaders of society should have some semblance of some reasonable fear of God, or at least understanding truth and laws of real nature.
Yeah.
Beyond that, what's the result of a leader who doesn't just have fear of God, but has developed love for God?
Yeah, we see here like Maharaj Parikshit or Yudhishthira Maharaj. It's described that the whole earth planet becomes like the spiritual world practically. We read in the Vedic literatures how during the reign of pious and Krishna conscious kings, it was practically like people had no disease. It rained at the proper time. You didn't even have to plant your gardens. They would just grow automatically. The oceans would be full of gems and jewels, and people didn't even have to die if they didn't want to. This was described to be like that. And they would help them go back to Godhead. And many kings have come, and they've liberated their entire kingdom back to the spiritual world. So this is possible. So during this 10,000 year age that we have, we should strive for that. We have this time period to, even if you take a couple of births, still within 10,000 years, you try to perfect your Krishna consciousness, if not in this life. But don't, Prabhupada says don't come back. It gets worse. It gets worse and worse and worse. Thank you. It's a nice question. Any other comments or realizations? Yes, in the back there.
So so purified they don't have to suffer reaction to all their past sinful activities. And the next verse says, repeated hearing, one loses the tendency to commit sinful activity and develop true love for God. So if devotees can get together and go out and practice Hare Krishna Maha Mantra in places where there are a lot of people, then we can purify everyone's consciousness and free them from having suffering reaction to all the past.
Thank you, Bhakti-avatar. He was saying how we just simply once chant Hare Krishna, you could be relieved from all your sinful reactions. It's described that you could be relieved from more sinful reactions that you can commit. But also chanting Hare Krishna, we have to be careful of offenses. Because by performing sins deliberately, thinking that I'll chant Hare Krishna and be free, it's an offense. And there won't be any effect. We can't cheat Krishna. So and then we should also, like Sankirtan means mass, Samkirtan, engage others in chanting and hearing. Because someone hears just once the holy name, they'll remember that at the time of death. They can be hearing, they may think of that and be advance them spiritually. So yes, did you have your hand up? When Kalki comes, what was the rest? Yeah. Yes, that Satya Yuga starts again. So when Kalki comes, because it's so degraded, you see the people there, it's amazing. They're like pygmies and they're like cannibals and, they're just eating each other. And Krishna just comes and wipes them all out. They're killed by Krishna, so they probably have some benefit, of course, who Krishna kills still. But we don't want to wait and suffer all that. But Lord Chaitanya came, even amongst the animals to help us get out of here now so that we could go back to the spiritual world. Yeah, the cycles go on and on and on. So, any other comments or questions? Realizations? Jai. Thank you very much again for your kind attention, and all glories to Srila Prabhupada, all glories to Srimad Bhagavatam and Bhagavad Gita.